My name is Catherine Stoner. I am the Mosbacher Director of the Center on Democracy, Development, and the Rule of Law, and a senior fellow here. I'm a political scientist by choice and by trade. We at the Center on Democracy, Development, and the Rule of Law here at the Freeman Spogli Institute at Stanford have had a very loud and proud association with Ukraine. And so it's a particular pleasure today to introduce some alumni from our program who will be joining our discussion. We started with our Summer Fellows program on democracy and development that is shortly going to be renamed to the Fisher Family Summer Fellows on Democracy and Development program. We've also had a program known as the Ukrainian Emerging Leaders that brought Ukrainians like the Summer Fellows program to Stanford. It has been fabricated or reformed into a program that's now called Strengthening Ukrainian Democracy and Development, and we look forward to bringing about 6 Ukrainians this summer to Stanford on that program. And of course, we've also been the beneficiaries of the Liotod Visiting Fellowship, and we had Alexei Honcharuk, who I'll introduce shortly, as a Liotod scholar just last year. It's an honor, of course, to introduce this panel, but we are marking a very sad memorial, the beginning of Russia's war on Ukraine and on the Ukrainian people. This conflict has displaced millions of Ukrainians and caused the deaths of thousands more. And so in their memory, I'd like to begin today with a moment of silence and respect for those that we have lost and for their families. All right. Let me proceed by introducing our panel, and I see we now have all 4 of you on screen, and that's wonderful. I think you're all in Kyiv, right? Yes? Yeah. Okay, great. So first, let's start bottom left, our left. Alexei Honcharuk, who served as the 17th Prime Minister of Ukraine from 2019 to 2020, during which time he introduced important policy initiatives, including the institution of business privatization processes. Prior to serving as Prime Minister, Alexei was Deputy Head of the Presidential Office of Ukraine, and he was a member of the National Reforms Council under the President of Ukraine. In the autumn quarter of 2021, he was the Bernard and Susan Liotod Visiting Fellow at the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies and at CDDRL. And we miss you, Alexei, and we hope to have you back again sometime soon. To his right, and you can probably figure this out by process of elimination because there are 2 men and 2 women, so the other guy there next to him is Serhiy Lyshenko, who was a journalist with Ukrainska Pravda and was also a member of the Ukrainian Parliament from 2014 to 2019. He first came to political life and prominence, I suppose, during Ukraine's 2014 Maidan revolution, and he has continued to serve in government and civil society ever since. He's now working as an advisor to President Volodymyr Zelensky's Chief of Staff, Andrei Yermak, and he's working and living in the governmental bunkers during the start, or has been since the start of Russia's invasion and siege on Kyiv. I'm happy and proud to say he is an alumnus of the 2013 cohort of what is soon to be renamed, but was then called the Draper Hill Summer Fellows on Democracy and Development here at CDDRL and FSI. Alexandra Matvichuk, Sasha, upper left, is human rights, right, exactly. A human rights advocate and founder of the Center for Civil Liberties, which we are incredibly pleased and proud to even know her. It was recognized as a co-recipient of the 2022 Nobel Peace Prize. And we're lucky to get her because you might imagine that she is sprinting from event to event currently. The mission of the Center for Civil Liberties is to protect human rights and to establish democracy in Ukraine and the OSCE region more generally. The organization develops legislative proposals, exercises public oversight over law enforcement agencies and the Ukrainian judiciary, also conducts civic educational activities for young people. Matvichuk was a visiting scholar from 2017 to 2018 in our Ukrainian Emerging Leaders Program, which is now going to be called the Strengthening Ukrainian Democracy and Development Program at CDDRL. And finally, Sasha Ustinova on the left is a People's Deputy of Ukraine and members of Ukrainian's parliament, therefore. And since the beginning of Russia's invasion last year, she's met with lawmakers in the United States representing Ukrainian interests, including seeing the U.S. an address before the House of Representatives on February 28th of last year. Before government service, Sasha was the head of communications and anti-corruption in healthcare projects at the Anti-Corruption Action Center in Ukraine. She also was a visiting scholar with the Ukrainian Emerging Leaders Program at the Center on Democracy Development and the Rule of Law from 2018 to 2019. So welcome back. And finally, the moderator for our session today is Michael McFall, a friend and colleague, who is director of the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies here at Stanford. And for those of you who don't know where that is, you're in it right now. This is it. This whole building really is it. Mike is a political scientist. He is a professor of political science here at Stanford, but he also has a public voice. Some of you may have seen him on NBC News. He also is a columnist for the Washington Post. He served for 5 years in the Obama administration, first as special assistant to the president and senior director for Russian and Eurasian affairs at the National Security Council from 2009 to 2012. And then, of course, as U.S. ambassador to the Russian Federation from 2012 to 2014. I know he will want me to tell you, though, that he was off duty when Russia seized Crimea in March of 2014. He had already left. So, Mike, I could go through the books, including one that apparently you edited with me, but actually I think there are two, so we need to fix that in your official bio. And I'm going to just hand over the microphone to you now, and thank you all again very much for coming in and marking this, this terrible anniversary.
So thank you all for coming. I want to say a few introductory things, and then quickly I want to get to questions as fast as possible. I have a few to start us, but we really want to hear from you. I know we have lots of Ukrainians in the room today. This is a day for you to engage with our friends, 3 of which I think are in Kiev, and 1 I think is in Paris, if I'm not mistaken. First thing I want to say is to the Ukrainian students here at Stanford, this is a joint venture that we're doing with them. I want to say thank you. I'm going to moderate today, and then they are going to moderate tonight at 7 o'clock when we show a film. So thank you for being such a great partner with us through this horrific year that we've endured together here at Stanford. Second, I just want to say thank you to our colleagues. All of them are doing incredible work right now to defend their country against Putin's invading army. Some of them, Alexei, I think you're doing some things we can't even talk about. I'm going to let you decide what you're going to say and not. But you're going to hear in a moment from all of them, and I just want to say thank you for taking this time to being with us. We consider you, Stanford, part of our Stanford family, and it is a real honor that I, on this horrific day, can be with 4 of my friends on the screen there. I wish you were here, but we will celebrate victory the next time this day comes around, okay? And finally, just one housekeeping note for me as the moderator. We have 2 Alexandras on the screen right now. I think of one as being Sasha and the other one as being Lesia. Is it okay if I call you Sasha and Lesia so that everybody knows the difference. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. These are important people. One of them wasn't in Parliament, and one of them wasn't a Nobel Prize winner the last time they were here. So I wanted to be respectful. So thank you guys for being here. So again, this is meant to be an opportunity for you all to interact with our distinguished guests from Ukraine today. I'm going to ask one, maybe two questions, and then we're going to go to the microphones so that you can ask them whatever you want, okay? And the first just obvious question I want to start with, and just jump in as you see fit, I just want to get a sense of your mood right now. We're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about the war. We're going to talk about foreign policy, what the Biden administration should be doing more. I hope we're going to get to that. But right now, you know, it is a tragic day, as Catherine said. It's a horrific day. What's your mood right now? What are you thinking about right now? Just give us a sense of your mood, then we'll get to the more substantive things. And maybe I'll call on you so it makes it easier. So Sasha first, Lesya, Sergey, and Alexei next, finally.
Well, I would say good evening, but probably it's, I don't know, good afternoon there in California. I'll be very short and honest. Probably about an hour ago, we had been informed that we're waiting for a very massive attack this night. We know that the airplanes are already ready. They had been launched with a lot of missiles, and there is a very high probability that today Kyiv and other cities will be shelled pretty heavily at night. So this is the mood that people have been waiting for this for the few couple of days, but it doesn't matter for us. We're not leaving. The parliament was working today, and that's the mood of Ukrainians. We know we can be hit any day, we can die any day, but this is the reality we have to live in. And you know, when you see the polls on what people expect, the belief in Ukrainian victory raises up every day among Ukrainians, so as among the international partners, from what I can see, and people around the world. So that's to be short.
I will continue. I very clearly remember the 24th of February last year. I got up because somebody ring in my door, and I was very surprised because it was approximately 4 o'clock at the morning. And I looked to my phone and saw dozens of missed calls. I dialed up the last one, and that's how I known that Russian troops invaded Ukraine and started bombarding Ukrainian cities. And that moment, that day, I was unbelievable calm. And I wrote a post that it will be difficult, but we will prevail because history is playing against Putin. And today, after 1 year later, I will add to this post several things. I will emphasize that for this year of the large-scale invasion, when we faced with unbelievable cruelty of Russian troops who deliberately challenge residential buildings, schools, churches, hospitals, attack evacuation corridors, manage filtration camp systems, organize forcible deportations, commit murders, tortures, rapes, and other kinds of offenses against civilians. We still very vivid example that people fighting for democracy and freedom are much more powerful than the second army in the world.
Thank you everyone for being with us this night, and thank you, Mike, for making this event happen. So my mood today is quite optimistic still. I think Ukraine won this war on ethical side, and we have just to make the most difficult part, to finalize the war on the battlefield. And the result of this war has to make Ukraine powerful, independent state, member of European Union and NATO. A year ago, I woke up at 4 something, and at 6 I was in Ukrainian Railways office, which we decided to meet in case of war begin. And I'm now in train station in Kyiv, so this year I can say was spent on the railways. At the same time, so we started the war day with evacuation of organization and with beginning of civilians evacuation from war zone to western part of Ukraine. And 1st of March, I came back from new location of Укрзалізниця to Kyiv after I proposed Mr. Yermak, President Zelensky Chief of Staff, to join the team in the wartime, and he agreed, invited me to come back, and I believed I was helpful for him. At least we established this sanctions group, which you led together. You are co-chair with Mr. Yermak, Mike, and this was one of the ideas we decided to implement during the first days of the war. I believe this working group is a crucial platform and crucial place to discuss sanctions against Russians and to use this as a leverage against aggressor. So, coming back at the beginning of discussion, what is the mood today? I think Kyiv was very calm today, very, very calm. Streets quite empty. At the same time, it was very good, and I can say positive press conference of president just finished half an hour ago with very, I believe, very positive perspective for Ukraine in upcoming months. But the crucial measure has to be taken to implement this positive forecast is weapons provided by partners. Of course, Ukraine consider US as the main partner in this. And we very much appreciate what was done by you, American taxpayers, for Ukraine, by your leadership. At the same time, we need more, and we need this not even today, but yesterday. I remember discussion about Patriots, fighter jets, and tanks in April last year, in March last year. Now, part of this issue is solved, but if we started to deal with this issue earlier, we would have different picture on the front line. It would be much less damage for Ukrainian civilians, infrastructure, and a lot of people saved their lives if we started to be supplied by modern weapons by our partners. But again, we very much appreciate what has been done by your taxpayers, your government. Thank you so much. I'm ready for discussion.
Thank you, Franz, and thank you, Mike, for this perfect event. I miss you so much, Franz. I'm a little bit tired. I'm very angry, still very angry, and at the same time I feel proud that I feel that we together are making a history. We are writing a history right now at the moment. I feel proud. I'm proud to be Ukrainian. I'm proud that my country is changing the world right now. I believe this. I believe, and I'm sure that before this war, I heard the opinion that authoritarianism is better suited for war because it's more mobile, less distracted by domestic politics, and shouldn't count human losses. And this created the illusion that democracy is indecisive, vulnerable, and as a result, weak. And it was very dangerous for democratic world. And it was a part of a big democratic the crisis in democracy in the world. And I feel proud that Ukraine now denied this and showed the soft power of democracy. When people, the nation, the real people, defend the state and not the other way around. I think that Ukraine proved that the myth about the weakness of democracy as a model is just a fake. And I feel proud that the role of Ukraine in the world has changed, dramatically changed. And if before this war started, Ukraine was a beacon of democracy only for post-Soviet region, maybe a little bit more, I feel that Ukraine now is a perfect example how to be brave for all the countries in the world. So to make a long story short, I'm a little bit tired, angry, and very proud to be Ukrainian, and very happy to be with you guys this night. Thank you very much.
Those were fantastic answers. Thank you all. Yes, yes. So I just have 2 more questions, and then we're going to go to the audience, okay? Second question. And Alexei, let's start with you, then Sasha, Lesya, Serhiy. That's the way you're looking on my screen. What's the one thing that you want Americans to understand about your country, about your fight, that you think that we just don't get? You know, one thing that if you could just talk to the Americans, here you are, that you would like President Biden and everybody else to understand about your country right now at this moment. You've already hinted at it, but I want you to expand on it if you'd like to. So Alexei, first over to you.
I think that a year ago, when we, with you, Mike, with Catherine, organized the conference about the collapse of Soviet Union, we a little bit discussed that, and maybe you remember that we already told about the war between Ukraine and Russia for democracy. I believe that we discussed that it's not a war for territories, for resources. It's not a regional conflict. It's a war for democracy, for freedom. And I told you that Russia will invade Ukraine because of our democratic and civilizational choice. I hope that now American people understand this much better. I want American people to understand that now we are together, so Ukrainians on the front line, you on the back, so you're supporting us, all civilized democratic world. We are destroying the biggest prison on the planet, prison of nation. It's much bigger prison than Bastille was. And I believe that when this prison will be destroyed, the huge, enormous social energy of a new few free nations will be released. And I believe we should realize this new reality, and we should be prepared for this, because these free nations will need our guidance and support. I feel like Western politicians are still supporting Ukraine very often with a too little too late policy. I want American people to understand better that to be brave means to be safe in this world. The world with aggressive Russian, with a strong and unpredictable China. Be brave means be safe. So this very simple message I want to share with American people, and there is no any reasons to be scared. We realized it in Ukraine a long time ago. And I think that this is the main and most important message I want to share tonight.
Great. Sasha.
Probably the most important, and that's what Alexei has mentioned already. It's when this is not a Ukrainian war. This is Ukrainians fighting for the world. This is the war of civilizations. This is the war between the West and between democracy and totalitarian regimes. And all the other countries, including China, is watching what's going to happen in Ukraine. Because if Ukrainians go down, that means that it's not Ukraine who has lost to Russia. This is the world, the Western world, all the democracies that could not stand together with us. And when I say stand with us, we had never asked for any boots on the ground. We didn't ask any American soldier to come and fight for us or any other countries. But we had been asking for the exact support, which means weapons, weapons, weapons. And what I keep hearing is how long it's going to take and how much more money you need. I can just tell you that when you look at the numbers, and the last number that was circulated is 140 billion US dollars that had been spent on Ukraine. basically, this is about 60% of this sum that was actually spent on Ukraine. The rest was spent for other countries to provide them with weapons, for Africa to feed them with the greens and stuff like that. But basically, it means that an average American taxpayer had paid about $15, $20 per month to fight our war. For us, it's not about $15 or $20. For us, it's about lives. A friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, who has been visiting me at Stanford and who is now sitting in the Ukrainian parliament right next to me, had lost her husband. I have two of my colleagues now who are the members of the parliament fighting in the South. They had been liberating her son. And these people never ask how much it takes in terms of money or in terms of time. They just know that this has to be done and that Russia has to be destroyed. And again, I was a little bit surprised when I was asked, what is a Ukrainian victory? Because President Zelensky and Ukrainians had been very vocal about it. And this is actually one of the things that I think not even Americans, but a lot of people do not understand, is because I remember when I was in DC visiting Congress in summer, and we were asking for the long-range missiles, the first question I would get was, but you're going to hit Crimea. And my question was, isn't it a part of the Ukrainian territory? Because we were very clear, and we had provided all the assurances that we would never hit any other territories like Russia, like Belarus, with any weapons coming from another countries. But Crimea is a Ukrainian territory, and our victory is the total liberalization of each piece of the each kilometer of the captured territories since 2014, not since 2022. So just to summarize what I had said previously, the number one thing is we all have to realize this is not a Ukrainian war. This is a civilization war. And if the West loses in Ukraine, it's going to be a total collapse for the rest of the world.
Lesya, yeah, go ahead, please.
When you take any sociological polls about values of Ukrainians, you will see that the first and the foremost value for Ukrainians is freedom. And now in this war, we are fighting for a freedom in all senses, for a freedom to be an independent country, for a freedom to be Ukrainians and to preserve our language and culture, and for a freedom to have our democratic choice as a chance to build a country where the rights of everybody are protected, government is accountable, judiciary is independent, and police do not beat students who are peacefully demonstrating. And this means that we have no other choice. If we stop fighting, there will be no more us. And what I want to say to American people, I want to say a sincere gratitude. Thank you. Ukraine and Ukrainians will always remember how American people support us in this dramatic time of our history.
Thank you for saying that. Sergey.
Very difficult to add something more because all my colleagues and friends said so deep, from the deep of the heart and with huge empathy. What I can just say, so the prescription for war victory is triangle. First, it is weapons. Second, it's sanctions. Third, is financial support of Ukraine in this difficult time because we lost big part of our economy, and just to function as a state, we need money. And all measures, the leading role was taken by American government and financed by American taxpayers. It is really big deal. Your president was in Kiev this week, and he did not say something like John Kennedy said in Berlin in 60s. You remember Kennedy said, "Ich bin ein Berliner," meaning that he is part of the community of this free city surrounded by enemies, and he united himself with Berliners. Visit of President Biden to Kyiv had the same symbolic sense. No phrase like this, but the symbol is very, very similar. And we very much appreciate that it was done by him, and we appreciate everything was done by American taxpayers, American government officials, American military commanders. All Americans played big role, and I believe the next step after the victory should be brave and successful future together in Euro-Atlantic institution called NATO. I believe we should, after this war, work together under the umbrella of NATO because it is in common interest. Ukraine is showing the world that Russian army is not more the threat for global democracy because Ukraine, which is not member of NATO, is able to stop this army by brave soldiers with quite poor weapons. But to win the war and to finalize it, we need more weapons, more sanctions, and more financial support. And everything taken from American government is very much appreciated by us. So thank you very much. I don't need to say more. It's enough.
So I have one last question for everybody, and then I'm going to call on people so they can see you. We need you to come to the microphone, and so if you have a question, get ready because we're going to the microphones. Last question, and I guess I can't remember where I started last time. Sasha, we'll start with you. Sergey, Alexei, and Lesya will get the last word this time. Tell us what you're anticipating for the coming year, both in terms of your own individual work. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing. I think it would be interesting for everybody here to know what you are personally doing, what you anticipate in terms of the war effort itself, and what you anticipate or want to anticipate with respect to Western assistance for what's happening in your country. You've already said a lot about that last one, so echo it if you want, but both what you are anticipating for you to do in the coming months, what you expect happening on the battlefield, and what more you would like to see from your friends outside of Ukraine.
Thank you so much. So when the war started, I was 9 months pregnant, and I was probably the only person out of all the panelists who was not in Kiev. I was blessed, honestly, because I didn't get to experience what they had. I was in Texas, and I took the first flight to DC and spent my last months of pregnancy basically working in Congress and lobbying for all the support we could have had.
Let me just interrupt. Sasha was flying on airplanes when she was not supposed to be flying on airplanes, according to her doctor. Is that true or not? Tell me the truth, Sasha.
Well, yes, I wasn't a nice person. I lied to them that yes, but actually, to be honest, you could not even imagine the faces of your US senators and congressmen, because when I entered the room saying we need weapons to fight because the baby needs to go home, they were asking me, when is the delivery? And I said, well, in less than a month. They said, well, then you shouldn't be here. I'm like, well, I can deliver even on the Senate floor if you just give us So that was my way of persuading them. And to be honest, it was pretty difficult because I remember the first day of war, and it was Monday, and we had the meeting with the Ukrainian caucuses in Senate, in Congress. Everybody was literally telling me, call the president or the chief of staff and tell them to evacuate. Well, I did call. I was trying to rephrase nicely the response, because if I said the exact words they did, we would probably get less help. But what I was telling them is, we need your weapons because we're not going to go down. Even if Kyiv is, even if Kyiv goes down, you cannot even imagine what people will be doing inside. We're not going to be the second Afghanistan, and we're going to fight till the last person in Ukraine. And it was pretty difficult at the beginning because the best we could have got was the bulletproof vests, some javelins. And to be honest, when I was telling them later, coming back later, that javelin is a very popular name among children now. And I'm not even talking that HIMARS now is a very popular dog name. They were very surprised because they never thought we could have used that weapons. And at the beginning, again, it was not a lot of help. And I was pretty disappointed when I heard Biden's speech. It was the State of the Union speech he had about a week after the invasion. And it was all about Ukraine. It was about the strong sanctions. It was about how supportive the United States was. But honestly, when you open the sanctions and you see the exemptions done through the Treasury at night, that's what got us very disappointed. But on the other side, I fell in love with the American people. When the polls came out in 2 weeks, and as long as I remember, 70-something% of Americans supported the oil and gas embargo, and 63% of Americans supported the no-fly zone. And probably 99% of the people did not understand what the no-fly zone is, but they knew this is something that would protect Ukrainians, that would protect people and children fighting for their own independence. And it was a very tough fight for us because getting each new piece of weapon was a new fight on the international level and a diplomacy fight. I remember when I was saying the word HIMARS, everybody was telling me, forget this word. And when I was telling them we need the long-range missiles, the first answer was no. When I was talking about the tanks, we started it in April or May, the first answer was, don't even dream about it, you're never gonna get it. We have it now. But unfortunately, we have it a bit too late. If we had the MLRS systems or the howitzers or the HIMARS that we have now from the United States and other European partners, and not only European partners, Mariupol would probably not happen because we would have enough power, enough military power to protect the city. And the number one job for me now is to get us more weapons, to persuade the Congress to, I'm so sorry, but to push the government to support us more with weapons. And that's the way it had been working so far. It was the US, it was the Americans who went out publicly saying we need to give more weapons to Ukrainians because they're fighting Russians, who we always considered being our enemies. Second is the Congress, who was sending letters, literally going to the NSC, to Pentagon, and pushing them to providing us with more support. And it's still going on, and it's still the same fight because I had a dinner a few days ago with 5 American congressmen, and the only thing we had been discussing was the F-16s, the jets. And they were asking me, why do you need the jets? Can you please explain us why exactly you need the jets and this type of jets? And I just don't understand why we still have to go through this long process of pushing for delivering these weapons when it is already obvious that there is no escalation that Putin would do just because somebody gave us an additional piece of weapon. Because before that, the previous year, it was always about, we don't want to escalate. After the atrocities in Bucha and Irpin, I could hardly imagine what could be the next escalations. But unfortunately, it was not obvious to a lot of our international partners. That is why I hope this year is going to be much easier for us to receive the weapons we need, to receive the maintenance, the trainings that we need to use these weapons. And I'm pretty much hopeful that this year is going to be the year of victory, and that our next anniversary on the 24th of February, Mike, we're going to celebrate probably in Crimea. I think that would be the best solution for us.
Over to you, Lesya. I think you might have to go, so please take the microphone.
We document war crimes in this war, which started not in February 2022, but in February 2014, and was extended to the large-scale invasion in 2022. And we faced with unprecedented numbers of war crimes. I always say that we document not just human rights violations or Geneva and Hague conventions. We document human pain. Russia uses war crimes as the methods of warfare. Russia attempts to break people resistance and occupy Ukraine by the tool which I call the immense pain on civilian population. And we record this pain in order sooner or later, all Russians who committed these crimes by their own hands, as well as Putin and other senior political leadership and high military command, will be brought to justice. And what I want to see in future, I'm not a person who can predict future. I'm a person who try with my efforts to create a future which we want to see. I remind you that when large-scale invasion started and civilized world understood that Ukraine will resist and Ukraine can resist, they took the narrative, let's help Ukraine not to fail. But now we have to convince all countries which represent democracy and human rights as their basic values to change this narrative to another. Let's help Ukraine to win fast. There is a huge difference between these two narratives. And I look in future with optimism. Still, I don't see that future will be easy.
Thank you. Sergey, I think you're next, and then Alexei.
Yeah, I'm next. Difficult to say something different again. You know, the most beneficial is the one who is speaking first because he can say a lot, and then you just can join the statement. But yeah, this year gonna be a year of big internal transformation. I believe for our organization, for Ukrainian Railways, it's a big chance to really establish on the basement of old but working Ukrainian Railways, something new but also very good working. So this is a moment for renovation, for financial support to come to make changes happen, to get attention of our partners on these crucial institutions like railways, like oil and gas and energy infrastructure, like small medium enterprises, like digitalization. By the way, digitalization is very comprehensive in Ukraine. So when we're talking about Ukraine in wartime, we should remember that Ukraine did not stop. I don't want to say reform process because the word reform is sometimes not relevant to another world war, but change is going on. And our digital platform, digital e-government platform called DIA, one of the most comprehensive. Our digital banking is one of the best in Europe, and this is ongoing process even in the wartime. So a lot of positive changes going on day by day during this and previous year. Regarding army, I think Ukrainian army gonna be the best army in Europe, and it would be a privilege for NATO to have Ukrainian army on the board because it will defend Europe much better than Europe has able to do with its own armies. So Ukraine will play a big role here. And internal politics, I think we should pay a lot of attention not to let oligarchs, including former presidents, to say we need our TV channels to come back and to say the word of truth. No, oligarchs' TV channels should not come back. We should pay attention on different topics, how to establish properly working public broadcasting, how to limit influence of oligarchs, but to increase influence of independent platforms and television, which is financed by taxpayers and which is public broadcast. So it's a unique moment to make changes, positive changes happened, which sometimes is not possible to do in regular situation because so many obstacles, so many resistance. Now it's possible to do a lot of things from the scratch. So I think despite the war, it's big room for positive changes in Ukraine. I'm not sure that all of them can be implemented without pressure from abroad, but Ukraine also unique that we cannot survive with money of international supporters, and this money always goes with conditionality. So conditionality is a good leverage to implement the reforms, and it's our homework, but at the same time, this is a topic we can cooperate. So this is our mutual interaction, I think, in 2023. But Let me come back to the previous statement. Weapons, sanctions, financial support, crucial for democracy in Europe to survive. With your support and your taxpayers' money, it can happen. Thank you again.
You said you didn't have anything to say, Sergey, but you had a lot to say, so thank you. Alexei, the last word to you, and then we're going to go to our audience, okay?
Yes, Mike, you asked me about my personal role and experience. I'll try to share a couple of moments. Last year, I came exactly from Stanford to Ukraine and started preparing for the future invasion. I didn't believe that Putin is so stupid to invade, but we realized that we should be prepared. So we were trying to prepare, but we wasn't prepared, because now I understand that it's impossible to be prepared for this stuff. You can spend all your life to be prepared for this, and in the end of the day, you will not. I've changed a lot. This year changed me dramatically. I bought a gun for the first time in my life. I've lost.
Alexei is an economist, everybody, just so you know.
I've lost 7 kilograms. I made a bunch of my new friends and almost forgot English, which you can see for yourself right now. Now I'm involved in producing drones, military drones, in develop military IT. Maybe you heard about Ukrainian IT system Delta. I'm working very closely with these guys. They are not, they're very cool. And this is a huge example how in Ukrainian reality you can build on the highest NATO standards IT system with I don't know, with a very small money and in an incredibly short time. Ukrainians are incredibly technological here. I'm advocating the implementation of NATO standards in the ZSU, and Sergey was absolutely right when he told that now it's a very good time for changes. I see how quickly Ukrainian army, the ZSU, is changing now. These changes are dramatically incredible. I think that it was one of the most traditional and post-Soviet institution in Ukraine, and now they look like very different if you will compare them from like year ago and now. It's absolutely different picture. I think that, and so I believe that what is very important to understand, and why I am very optimistic, that Ukrainians fight not only brave but smart, and Ukrainians become more and more technological every day. And this is very important to understand. The quality of our troops are raising every day. And I believe that now Ukraine have no right to be inefficient, because for us it's a matter of national survival. And that's why it's very important to fight smart and to have this like competitive advantage with the fight of Russia. So I'm doing and I'm investing all my time to make Ukrainian army smarter and to help Ukrainian like troops to use modern technologies, drones, IT systems to create this smart ecosystem. I'm trying to, I'm sure actually, so about my little forecast. I'm sure that this year will be the first year when robots will really fight each other on the battlefield in Ukraine. I absolutely sure every day in front of my eyes, physically, I see scenarios from the sci-fi films. And I think that now in Ukraine, the real cyberpunk is born, actually. So we have future here from a technological perspective. And that's why I think that Ukraine, thanks to your support, Western support, thanks to our creativity, thanks to this actually democracy, because democracy allows us to participate in this fight. All the people, and so in Ukraine, civil society, business, all society institutions are involved in this fight. So all this mix, all this, I would say, melting pot, are working now for our freedom. That's why I think that this year will be successful. And as President Zelensky today said, we expect that this war will be a war of our victory. I believe this is true. And every day I see how it's possible. But as my colleagues already mentioned, we do need more support, more weapons, and more pressure on our enemy, because it's not Ukrainian fight, it's not Ukrainian war, it's a war for democracy. And it's a one for all over the world. Thank you.
So you all have been very generous with your time, and I know it's very late in Ukraine, but can you just stay for a few minutes for some questions or not?
Of course.
It's okay? All right. So why don't we line up behind these two microphones. Lesia had to go give a speech. She's in Paris. She's giving a speech right now. And let's just bounce back and forth, and Anastasia will start with us. My only request is, could you introduce yourself to our guests so that they know who they're speaking with?
Hello, it is really nice to see you all. I'm Anastasia. I'm a senior studying political science and economics at Stanford. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. It's very important. In the days leading up to the anniversary today, I've once again was reminded of how pervasive Russian disinformation is. When people in conversation mentioned the far-right Ukrainian government, the need to cede territory, push Ukraine to peace talks, and other similar tropes. And I was just wondering, what advice do you have in handling these conversations when it seems like people are not willing to listen to your arguments or to your perspective? Thank you.
Sure, Sasha, go ahead. And Sergey deals a lot with disinformation too. But anyway, we'll start with Sasha, and then, but we don't, all three don't have to answer every question because we'll have questions. But please, if you want to, go ahead. First with Sasha.
Every time I hear people talking about the peace talks and that we need to come to some, I don't know, compromise and sign a peace treaty with Russia, I remind these people that this has been done already in Minsk. The Minsk agreement was about the compromise for Ukraine. It was not in our favor. It was the world who pushed us to sign that treaty. And unfortunately, it hasn't stopped Putin. And that's why when people keep talking about, again, some peace treaties that we need to sign, it doesn't stop him. So this is the argument that nobody can beat. And especially it is easy to talk about it with Germans who are saying, well, sorry, guys, we didn't sign the Budapest Memorandum, so we're not in this game. Well, unfortunately, you were the ones who came up with the Minsk Agreement and made us sign it. And it didn't help. And when we talk about, I think Sergey can talk about the disinformation. I can just tell you one thing about the disinformation from my personal experience. It will get worse. Right now, I'm chairing the Parliamentary Oversight Commission on arms control. So basically, every piece of weapon which is coming to the country as a military aid is being monitored by our commission. And right now, we see a lot of articles, especially in European media, saying that we are smuggling weapons or arms. We are reselling them to Russia. Even you wouldn't believe it. Only Russians can put anything like that. Ukrainians selling weapons to Russia, but we understand that this campaign will be used especially by some of the politicians in the West as well. So the first thing, we're smugglers. The second, that there is a huge corruption in Ukraine. If you remember Putin's speech on the 21st, when it became obvious that he was going to attack, one of the biggest pieces in his speech was about Ukraine fighting corruption and Americans funding this. So just because we did not fail, just because we were very good in fighting corruptions and not getting our people corrupt, it was one of the reasons why he couldn't literally ruin Ukraine from inside, and he had to invade.
Sergey, do you want to add something, or should we go to other questions?
There's always nothing to add, but it's always.
Sorry.
First of all, you said it's too late in Ukraine. Mike, we have curfew. We have nothing to do in Ukraine. Nightlife is broken. We have no night working at night. They are working only in daytime until 10 p.m. So everything is closed at 9:30. We can just enjoy the conversation the whole night. The second, it's like, propaganda is so, it's primitive, but very sophisticated at the same time. Goebbels, this German propagandist, he was very creative, saying that the most primitive propaganda works best. Oh, how it's possible? A Jewish president in European country, supported by 75% on elections, established Nazi regime in Kiev. It's not like a bullshit. It's just nothing. Maybe you can advise it. Maybe you can. I know what you should do. You should find granting. We can come for 1 year in Stanford and make a good PhD on this topic. No, I think the best from this topic. But in reality, of course, we have to repeat that it's fake. We have to say on all platforms, online, offline, in all audiences, that it's not true. Ukraine is a democratic state, and Hitler in this war is Putin. He used all Hitler instruments. He established genocidal politics against Ukraine. What he did when he invaded to the cities, he created concentration camps. What happened in Yabluneve village? It was written by Time magazine. Read the story. It's like a few dozen pages story in the recent Time magazine issue. Have you read it? It's really like concentration camps. They put 300 local inhabitants in the basement of schools. They died there. They lived there. They had no eat, no air, nothing, no water. It's just the worst examples of genocide in 21st century we can imagine. And all of this propaganda is supported by propaganda, because to have such support in Russia is only possible when it's supported by bloody, brutal, and very primitive propaganda. Our role to disclose it, to study it, to ban Russian propagandists elsewhere in Europe, in US. I think it's a shame what happened in Austria this week, when Austrian government let Russian MPs, members of parliament, and Russian propagandists to come to Parliamentary Assembly of OSCE, this international organization. It's a shame. We cannot let it happen in such circumstances at all. We have to prosecute these people, and I believe in future court process, which for sure can happen. We have to execute the indictment against propagandists on the same level as against military crimes and the political leadership of Russia. This is fast answer on your question, but I think in reality, it's a topic for good PhD research for sure. How to find effective counter-propaganda when state invested billions. Russia today invested for billions of dollars by Russian government, and they have very limited influence in US and Europe, but huge influence in Arabic world, in Asia and Latin America. This is a challenge. So, Mike, donation and find a sponsor. We will make this PhD.
Okay, we'll come back to that later. Sir, you have a question.
My name is Claude Ezron. I'm a member of a community in Palo Alto. I would be interested in hearing about the political life in Ukraine under a state of war. Like, for instance, have all the political parties coalesced to support strongly the government? Also, how is the parliament functioning? What is it working on in this state of war?
Alexei, why don't we go to you first, and then Sasha is in the parliament. She can answer, and Sergey. But there's still many questions here, so but jump in as you want or see fit. It's a great question.
Okay, I think that obviously during the war, the political life is very limited because of many reasons. But what's very important to admit that almost all, I would say all pro-Ukrainian political parties and major political organizations in Ukraine are more or less united. It looks like the president has absolutely incredible, almost total support in all. He controls all state bodies and has a huge support from the people. So now it's complicated to speak about the political life in a normal wording. There are some conflicts on the local levels between the central government and local governance, but it doesn't look like a systemic problem. I don't feel that we have problems with the freedom of speech, and I don't feel that we have problems with some political rights. Of course, you can't organize, you can gather people and organize some manifestation now, but it looks like smart because the war is very hot. So we have a real full-scale hot stage war here in Ukraine. And in this circumstance, the political life should be limited. I think that Ukraine was and will be a democratic state after we will win this war. I don't have any doubts.
Sasha, you want to add something? Just so everybody knows, Sasha's in a party that's separate from President Zelensky's in the parliament.
Yes, so probably answering your question on what the parliament is doing. Ukraine is a parliamentary presidential republic. So unfortunately, even to extend the martial law, this is something that the parliament does. If you look at the agenda of the parliament now, I would say 1/3 are the bills related to war, 1/3 are the bills related to EU integration, because we need now to work a lot for the harmonization of our legislation with the EU for much easier later work and acceptance. And 1/3 is all the other stuff related to, of course, like, I don't know, pensions, children, ratifications, and stuff like that. So the parliament is working, of course, under the pressure, because every time we get together, we understand that there can be an attack, and we stop working if the sirens go on. But on the other side, we have our warriors fighting in the east. We have our cabinet of ministers working 24/7 now to get everything which is needed for the war. So we as the parliamentarians have to do it on our end. We also started, and to be honest, unfortunately, it had failed before, I think, at some point, a lot of the parliamentary diplomacy and a lot of work in this especially case, because at some countries, which are crucial for us now in terms of weapons and arms, we didn't even have embassies. So we literally have to reach out as parliamentarians to their parliamentarians asking for more support and stuff like that.
Great. Does anybody else want to jump in, or should we go to the next question?
Maybe I will.
Yeah, please, Lesia, and welcome back. Good to see you again.
Everybody knows in this war for what we are fighting for. But when we speak about a war, it's always there is a threat to become a mirror of another side, especially when we speak about Russia, which very brutally ignore all provisions of international laws and violate all decisions of international organizations. So we have, as a human rights defenders, a special role to remind Ukrainian society that there is no sense to win the war with Russia and to transfer to Russia itself. But why I'm looking to, with huge optimism, to a future democratic transformation in Ukraine and reaching all requirements of Euro integration process. Ukrainians always was very good in fighting with authoritarian regimes, but we weren't so good in building sustainable democratic institutions. And there is a very clear historical roots, because for centuries we have no privilege and have no luxury to have our own state. And we always have a state apparatus which was not only repressive, but was foreign, like it was imposed by Russian Empire to govern their colony. And that's why when Ukrainian independence was restored in 19th, the Ukrainian people took such a behavioral model that we don't touch you and please state don't touch us. But with this behavioral model, it's very difficult to succeed to build sustainable institutions. But after large-scale invasion started, we see a huge wave of solidarity across Ukrainian society. And state work together with business and with civil society. And now Ukrainians understood that this is a huge luxury to have the state and state institutions which represent you. And this means a huge shift in mentality, which lead us to success in this time to build the sustainable democratic institutions.
Terrific. Mr. President.
This is, sorry.
I was going to go to another question, but Sergey, do you want to jump in, or?
I just want to say that democracy exists in Ukraine even in the wartime. We have parliament working. We have a situation when all Ukrainian citizens have chance to see plurality of even political views on different media platforms. There are part of criticism in this moment because of the television marathon, but I believe television is just one of the many sources of information for Ukrainians now, so it's not so crucial for Ukrainians to understand what's really going on in the politics. So it's a good role model for some European countries, which I believe now has less democracy than Ukraine have in the wartime. Not all of them, but few of them for sure have less democracy than Ukraine has now. But it doesn't mean that we should not stop on this. We have to develop our democracy and to take care about this every day, 24/7. So that's it.
So I'm nervous. We're out of time, and I see 4 people at the microphones. Can you guys stay just a little bit longer?
I can stay the whole
Okay,
night.
so here's what we're going to do.
On the train station in Ukraine, we have the ability to stay 24/7.
Okay,
That is fine.
so let's take this question, have them answer, then we'll take all the questions of the people standing, and then we'll end. So forgive me, sorry to, if you need to leave, please leave, but go ahead.
Дякую дуже. I think we have...
No, please introduce yourself. They need to know who you are.
I'm the visiting fellow. My name is Elbek Dorch. And
No, that's not enough. This is the former prime minister, the former president of Mongolia. He led the revolution for democracy in Mongolia.
Thank you.
And for our Ukrainian colleagues, you need to know that he studied in your country. If I'm not mistaken, he met his wife in your country. He speaks fluent Ukrainian, and he is our brand, Alexei, he's our new Leotoud fellow. He has succeeded Alexei Goncharuk as our next
Welcome to the
Leotoud
club.
fellow.
Дякую.
But Mike, please please moderate the question because we have a risk that it's gonna be like a proper statement, you know, for 15 minutes.
I want to hear only on two things your messages. So one message from us, just 2 days ago, there was in UN General Assembly vote. And they voted against the invasion 141 nations. You know that in March last year, also they voted 141 nations. Means that the world is still standing with you quite solid. This is great news. And two things. Just I saw that President Biden visited Kyiv. It was great. Also, Kremlin claimed that Xi Jinping is going to visit in these days Russia, but he didn't. But there was his state counselor there was. And China is buying a lot, and I think China is committing more. What is your message to the President Xi Jinping? And other thing which Sasha mentioned about corruption, also Putin talked a lot about corruption in Ukraine. What is your second message on corruption issues in Ukraine? Thank you very much.
Corruption exists in Ukraine. It's not a surprise for everyone because corruption is, first of all, it's a global issue. Second, it's a traditional problem for Ukraine for 30 years. I think we should be focused on reaction on the corruption. It should be investigated and properly indicted, and the decision of the court has to make a decision what's really happened. So we should pay all our efforts to support anti-corruption institutions and to make anti-corruption investigation finalized with court decision, because unfortunately so many cases opened and only few of them now in the decision of the court. So I believe we will handle with this problem in the future, but it will happen only with strong support of our international partners. I call international partners to take this topic in the focus and be strict with this topic. So not to let corrupt individuals to play with them. And regarding global partners from the South, and some of them don't like this phrase, I don't like it too. We have partners everywhere in the world. We should not call them Global South. It's our homework because we made a lot of mistakes in the past. We did not pay a lot of attention at the moment when Russia paid too much attention how to establish these narratives among former partners of former Soviet Union in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Ukraine now understands how many mistakes were done during 30 years of our independence. I believe it's going to be one of the biggest focus for government next years. And starting from last week, remember, President made dozens of calls to international leaders from Asia, Africa, Latin America. He will continue working on this direction for sure.
So we're really out of time. We need to respect, people are starting to leave, just so you guys see, because we're supposed to end. So the people standing, I want to be respectful for you. Please ask a really short question, and then we'll give our panelists one last round to wrap up, okay? And to my panelists, don't feel compelled to answer all the questions, just answer the question that you want to, okay? And if you don't even want to answer that, just give us your final words when they're done, okay? So please, sir.
Hi, my name is Ulukbek. I'm from Uzbekistan, like post-Soviet Union country. And I want to thank you guys for defending your country at the same time, like fighting for our freedom as well. And I believe after your victory, the situation will be changed in most countries. And the question which I want to ask, is there any calculations or predictions, like in the best case scenario, when we can celebrate your victory?
Okay, great. Please, sir.
Hi, my name is Don Draper, and I'm a commissioner on a Santa Clara County Commission for the Support of Ukraine. And I wanted to probe a little bit what I think are the root causes of this war. It goes beyond just Putin and his delusions, but to the Russian imperial movement. Please comment on that and how we can fight that.
Excellent. Ma'am?
I'm Kathleen Mutch. I'm the retired editor at the Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences up here on the Hill. I am interested to know what you foresee about China's participation in crushing Ukraine. I hope it does not succeed. I hope it doesn't even try very hard, but I worry about that.
Great. And final question.
Kate Zeminska, Israel Program Manager here at FSI. Distinguished panelists, thank you so much for your dedicated work that you do. I really wish you a safe night and just a very, very peaceful year ahead with all the fight that you do for Ukraine and for us across the globe. With all of your anti-corruption efforts and with your strong backgrounds that you've been doing for Ukraine, let's imagine with the victorious end of the war that everyone is very confident about, the new front will be open. Actually, it will be continued, the fight to prevent and to eliminate corruption in Ukraine. So if you would kindly prioritize, because we know that EU candidate status that has been given to Ukraine is a very strong commitment. What would be the other priorities for deep and comprehensive reforms that Ukraine is undergoing amid war after victorious end of the war? What would be the priorities that the society and the government still have to keep in mind and on agenda to make Ukraine as strong as possible? Thank you.
So here's how we're going to end. Sergey, you're going first. Alexei second. Sasha third. Just take 1 minute. If you want to answer one of those questions, fine. If you just want to have a concluding remark, and we'll end with Sasha. We'll end with me, but Sasha will get the last word of the panel. Sergey, over to you.
Sorry, I will answer on few questions from this list. I think end of the war is the most difficult question to answer for everyone in the world, and someone who knows will earn a lot of money because you can make some investment on the stock market. But interest of Russia, we can say the interest of Russia is to have this war as long as possible, to wait until elections in US, to play with American candidates, and then to play with candidates, find a way how to influence on these candidates after the victory to stop supporting Ukraine. So, plan of Putin after his speech in parliament is very clear. War is new normality in Russia. So they don't consider war as something unusual anymore. They gonna live in these conditions as long as it will take, as long as Putin staying in power or even alive. They will invest in military. They will let local businesses to take control over spheres which are now empty because of the sanctions or because foreign investors left the market. They will try to build like new Iran, I think, able to survive without international technologies, international investments, international donors. We'll see what happens. I believe our goal to finish with the war this year. So I'm sure we're interested to finish the war as soon as possible. But to finish the war, we can only after big counteroffensive, which can happen, which can start only with weapons supply, which we expect to start it these days until the end of spring. So first tanks from Poland, Leopards, delivered today to Ukraine. Our Minister of Defense even made some video shooting from one of the Polish tank Leopard today. So it will supply gonna start soon, about to start, and first supply will be considered on the front line very soon. China, difficult to say on this question because China is really a big issue. I can only make reference toward President's words today. He said that it's important for China to present their plan, and it's good that they are not playing with Russia. Its plan has to be learned, and China should find the participation in the process of post-war and prevention of the war and stop the war processes. All of these processes are different, but we cannot ignore this player. But at the same time, we don't want to see China as a country supporting Russia in this war, which did not happen yet, but the risk is more or less permanently present. I don't see a big role of China now, but we don't want to see big role in the future. So we should be very accurate with this, because I think it's the last chance for Russia to find something is to find it in Beijing, and reform agenda. I think colleagues will be very good with the answer. Ukraine has been reforming a lot and has to reform in future a lot as well.
Alexei.
Short answers. The message to Xi Jinping, I hope that the dragon is smarter than the bear. I can explain, but it takes a lot of time, so I believe you understand me. I think that China, maybe they have smarter strategies than Russia had. And I hope that they are not going to be in a trap like Russia now. About reform agenda in Ukraine, it's a very long list of reforms, and it's a lot of stuff we should. It's a very long list, but if we're speaking about prioritization, privatization first of all, deregulation, anti-corruption, to finish land reform, and so on and so forth. I believe so. My priorities will look like this. About the real goals of Russia, I agree with Serhiy that for Russia is a last empire. They realize themselves like a last empire. That's why they are trying to attack democracy, not Ukraine. Actually, Ukraine for them it's only a symbol. And they started this war because Ukrainians choose to be free people. And for them, Ukraine's model and Ukraine as a model is a threat because they want to have countries around in the region like Uzbekistan controlled. They want to have this like sphere of control. And it's impossible if Uzbekistan will be a democratic state, for example. And it's not only about Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia. It's about Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and so on and so forth. And they realize it. So for them, Ukraine is very dangerous example. And that's why it's impossible to solve this war, solve this conflict with some compromise, because they want to see us dead. And if they want to see us dead and we want to survive, there is no any room for the compromise here. This is maybe my like final message answering these questions. From me personally, the only thing that hasn't changed for me this year is that I still miss the intellectual discussions, conversations during the incredible dinners the Mike regularly hosts at his house. I really hope that I will be able to participate in them after we will win and after our victory. I really miss you guys, and I hope I'll have an opportunity to join you as soon as possible. And this is the answer about what's my prediction on the time. Believe me, we are working very hard to make it as soon as possible.
Thank you, Alexei. Sasha, last word to you.
I will try to go really brief from what I've put some notes about China. So I think within the last year, China has made its decision, because they had a chance, and a pretty good chance at the beginning. And I was very much afraid when they sent some of those helicopters to Taiwan, that they were trying to take an opportunity on what was going on in Ukraine, but it did not happen. And on the other side, we should be very aware that China is going to be probably, she will win in this war anyway, because no matter how it ends, if Russia loses, China is going to be the beneficiary of it. And if Ukraine loses, China is going to be the beneficiary as well, because it will be clearly that the West has lost. But I really hope that within the last year it became clear that they're not going to get involved directly, even like Iran does with supporting and providing all these drones, and even the military who trains the Russian military how to use the drone. On the corruption issue, again, I've said about it a little bit before, but we should understand that Putin has invaded Ukraine from the outside is because he could not ruin Ukraine internally with corruption. He has put billions of dollars in Medvedchuk and his other puppets to actually make Ukraine weak inside, to corrupt people inside, but he lost. Is there corruption? Yes, there is corruption. But show me, please, any country in the world where there is no corruption. And the second thing is, just because we were successful in fighting this corruption, a lot with the international partners' support, Putin realized he is losing Ukraine. And all these investments go into corrupt politicians, pro-Russian politicians, does not end up in anything. And honestly, I was one of the founders of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, Anti-Corruption Prosecution, Anti-Corruption Court. And I'm happy to see now former MPs going to jail. I can see judges sitting in jail already. And these numbers are increasing because they are working properly. Our MPs are scared of hell of this anti-corruption institution. And this is a really good sign that actually we are doing our homework. I would also say that, probably just to wrap up about the reforms and everything, we need to do a lot of reforms, especially when we're looking towards the EU and their legislation. But we should understand, and Alexei said about it a little bit, privatization and liberalization of the markets. Why? Because Ukraine is the country of the opportunities, and it's going to be the best country for opportunities when the war is over. We already see investments coming because we need to rebuild all the infrastructure. We need to rebuild houses. There is a lot of opportunities that would be there available for our investors, and we have to make it as clear and transparent for them to work in Ukraine as we can.
So I have 3 really quick points in conclusion. First, if you haven't had enough, join us tonight. We'll be showing Freedom on Fire, Ukraine's Fight for Freedom in Dinkelspiel at 7 o'clock. We can continue the conversation there. Second, to our guests they're all now from Kiev. Lesia had to go give a speech. I just want you guys to know we are so proud of you. We feel very honored to have you as part of our alumni of CDDRL, FSI, and Stanford. And we just thank you from the bottom of our hearts for spending this time with us today. And I have 2 more words that I want to say. Slava Ukraina.
God bless America.